In the last 2 years, I have made 18 different episodes of taking various pop culture characters and superheroes and turning them into dragons. And it all started with Avengers as dragons. So now it's finally time to go back to the roots of this whole series. In this episode, I'm taking 4 more Avengers. Well, okay, 3 Avengers and 1 sort of Avenger, and I'm turning them into dragons. Let's get into it, shall we? Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show.
Months ago, I was faced with an unusual conundrum. Dragons unlike anything I'd ever seen or heard of were appearing in my world, and for whatever reason were specifically hunting down Dracarachnia. I was quite certain these dragons were not native to my world, and after a few weeks, that theory was proven correct. As I was further studying the Octavian Clawdrake, a mystical dragon with 4 glowing wings, antlers, and a slender, almost aquatic body flew down towards us. It swirled its hands in an intricate pattern, which caused a glowing set of rings and symbols to appear above its head, and an orb of light to spawn before it. It hurled the orb at the Octavian Drake, and the creature vanished. Well, I have fully accepted magic as a part of my world and the creatures in it. This was blatantly beyond anything native to my home. I followed this mystical, stranger dragon as it hunted down the other unusual dragons whose presence in my world had puzzled me. When it finished its work, the creature created a portal for itself and flew through it. I followed after it curiously and found myself in a world similar to my own, but far more drenched in magical energy. There were more miraculous creatures, and beings such as cyclopses, orcs, and elves walked about as abundantly as humans. I could have stayed in this world for years studying its creatures, but I have my own duties in my world, so I simply spent a few hours there watching the mystical stranger dragon before returning home. As it had proven capable of in my world, this dragon revealed a further, wider range of magical abilities and a high level of intelligence. It was a remarkable creature that further entrenched fascination in me about the mysticism, and frankly the madness, out there in the multiverse. Now, Doctor Strange as a dragon presented an interesting problem because, as I've established in the world of the Beast Chronicler, Tayron's world where all my dragon episodes take place, there is magic, but it's not so massively obvious that a dragon like Doctor Strange here could just be there as a species doing all kinds of crazy magic things, but also taking away the massive magicalness of Doctor Strange would make the dragon not really represent him very well. So, thinking back to my Spider-Man No Way Home Dragons episode, where I mentioned the idea that these dragons might be from another world, set this up very well, because, it was Doctor Strange's fault, kind of, in Spider-Man No Way Home, that the Spider-Man villains were coming over to Spider-Man's dimension. So I just decided to have this dragon be from my Dungeons & Dragons universe, which is similar to Tayron's, but has way more crazy magic kind of stuff to it, and everyone just obviously knows about magic. For the design of this one, I also knew I wanted it to be quite unique. I was thinking of it as being a little bit more godly and deity-like almost because of how crazy, magical, powerful Doctor Strange is. And for some reason, whenever I'm thinking of a sort of deity kind of design, I think of a bit more symmetry to it, which is why I did something I very rarely do, and used the symmetry tool to draw the head and the wings. I think that turned out really well, and also for part of his coloring, I took some inspiration from Defender Strange, the darker suit with the red pattern running along the middle. Overall, I love the design. I think the background is a little bit, a bit bland, but I think the dragon's detailed enough that it's not super noticeable. Hope you all like the result. Let's take a look. Upon returning to my dimension, I soon after spotted a type of dragon I was much more familiar with. The Pymulous Ant Dragon may not be able to conduct mystical spells or make portals, but it is still quite incredible in its own right, as a creature that is native to my world. The Pymulous Ant Dragon spends much of its time at its regular size of roughly 12 feet long from head to tail, but can shrink down to 3 inches long. It often does this when moving long distances or eating. This dragon can only fly when it's shrunk down, as its insect-like wings are not proportionately sturdy enough to carry it when at full scale. Cleverly, as mentioned, it will also only eat at small size. This means despite it spending much of its time as a roughly horse-sized creature, it only needs to consume 1 ounce of food per week. The first time I saw one, it actually flew onto an orange slice I'd cut myself while out camping in search of the hawk-shot needle drake, a creature I'll cover in a moment. The rapier I commonly carry was actually crafted by the hide of one of these creatures, so the tip can rapidly expand on impact and send opponents flying backwards. It's not as lethal as many of my other swords, but I tend to avoid bloodshed when it's an option, so my Pymulous sword suits my common combat needs. Notably, while these creatures are referred to as ants, they also somewhat resemble wasps, and this is more apparent in the females of the species, who have a yellow and black hide instead of a red one. They're also slightly more aggressive than the males, but neither are dragons you need worry about if spotted in the wild, as the species is generally pleasant towards humans. Now, this was the first dragon I knew I had to do for this episode, but it was also the one I was easily most excited to do. Because, for one, I'd referenced this dragon almost a year ago in my big Multiverse Tales crossover event where I first drew Tayron the Beast Chronicler, the guy narrating these episodes, because he mentions in the story that he has a Pymulous Ant Dragon sword, and in the drawing of him, he's carrying that sword, and yet I'd never drawn this dragon. So I was excited to do it for that reason, but also because I knew there was going to be a bunch of things about this one that I could do differently. For one, I could draw it at its really tiny size, so the environment would be a little bit different than usual. So I could draw really big blades of grass in the foreground, and as the environment goes farther and farther back, fade things out more and more, so it's like this is being taken with a really shallow depth of field kind of camera lens. But then also a fun challenge I knew was going to be trying to pull off the flapping, fluttering, insect-like wings. Because I've drawn some insect designs in the last little while that I really liked, like in the last Phobias as Demons episode, but whenever I've drawn insect creatures, I usually have them not looking like they're standing on the ground, and yet I just tend to draw the wings flat, as if they're not really moving, which doesn't really make sense, because if you're taking a picture of an insect flying, unless you have some insanely high shutter speed camera, the wings are going to be that super flappy, fluttery, super motion blurred kind of look. So I referenced a bunch of different images of insects in flight and tried to sort of replicate that by blurring out the wings a bit, having one sort of stable looking version of them that's a little bit blurred near the tips, and then having some faded versions of the wings to try and give it that fluttering look. I don't think I pulled it off perfectly, but for my first time actually trying to pull this off, I'm super happy with how it looks. I hope you all like it as well. Here is our Pymulous Ant Dragon.
Friendly little reminder here that anytime I do a dragon episode, all of the art from the episode ends up as posters on my online store. I'll link the 4 posters from this episode in the pinned comment, but, you know, maybe you want to go poking around my online store, see what else you like there. I've got t-shirts and ink bundles and lots of good stuff. But for now, back into more Avenger dragons. Let's go!
As mentioned, back when I discovered the Pymulous Dragon, I was seeking out a creature I'd heard tales of from archers in villages I'd passed through. They'd spoken of a dragon with very little in the ways of abilities or weapons, but with a specific skill that makes it particularly lethal when threatened. The hawk-shot needle drake is a wingless dragon with a bird-like beak and purple hide that stands at only about 6 feet tall while on all fours. Arguments have been made that it doesn't even qualify as a dragon, but I maintain the classification is justified. This creature can't breathe fire or lightning or even fly, but it can shoot needles from its tail with such precision that it could kill a squirrel from a mile away on a windy day. Its mind can process the elements around it and maneuver its tail with such flawless accuracy that it can hit whatever target it sets its eyes on. I've heard some claims that there are members of this species that can even shoot needles that freeze opponents or ignite them into flames, but I've yet to witness this myself or see any real evidence of it. Regardless, these creatures are widely revered by archers for their precision aim, and in regions that these creatures reside in, many archers will wear emblems representing the hawkshot's head as a symbol of their marksmanship. Some even take it as far as to slay hawkshots and consume their eyes, believing this will grant them the precise vision and accuracy of these creatures. This has never been proven to actually work, though admittedly I once took advantage of a situation in which I came across a warrior who had done this. I purchased the rest of the creature's hide, which he claimed to have no use for, and brought it to my armor crafting friend, Vasilia, the same woman who crafted my Pymulous sword, to make me a suit of hawkshot armor. Not my most dependable armor for protection, but quite flexible and good for quick movement and archery. The hawkshots may not be miraculously gifted in terms of vast abilities or power, but they do the one thing they're known for better than any other creature, and oftentimes that is enough to face whatever predator may threaten them or their offspring. Now, anyone who's played a bunch of Monster Hunter will probably recognize that this is heavily inspired by a creature from that game, the Tobi-Kadach, which never said out loud, I might be pronouncing it wrong. I tend to just call it Toby because that's part of its name and it's a funny name for a creature, but it's the same sort of scale as this dragon I'm drawing here, and it has that same ability where it can whip these needles off its tail to hit you, and I think they're electrified as well. I might be remembering its abilities wrong, it's been a while since I played Monster Hunter Rise, but anyway, partway through this design, well, I knew I really liked the idea of making this a fairly nerfed dragon with one ability that it can do really, really well, the needles shooting off its tail. I also thought, oh, maybe I should have given this dragon the ability to fly because, you know, Hawkeye literally has hawk in his name, but I felt like giving it the hawk-like beak worked well, and making it a drake kinda made this dragon a little bit more of an underdog who also has a really cool ability, and I felt like that worked pretty well for Hawkeye. Also, it was very fun getting to reference Vasilia Kuznet in this episode, the narrator of my Fantasy Armors episode. Having that series in the same universe as this series has been a lot of fun, because anytime I draw a dragon, I can use that dragon to be designed into an armor in a future episode. But anyway, quite pleased with this one. Pretty basic dragon, but, you know, that's kind of what I was going for. Hope you all like it. Let's take a look. The final dragon I'll discuss is the only one today I'd advise staying far away from. It's hard to say if it specifically hunts humans or what its nature truly is, as they've always appeared to myself and others I've spoken to be very erratic. The Egyptian moon dragon, as expected from the name, can largely be found in the deserts of Egypt, though some have been reported to appear in the Americas or Europe at various times throughout history. These are very lean wyverns with bird-like skeletal heads. They are nocturnal, and the blades at the ends of their tails resemble a waning moon. I've read various accounts of them protecting humans and also attacking humans. It's quite difficult to pin down the hunting patterns of these creatures, as they can seemingly change attitude from night to night. Sometimes they'll aggressively assault creatures that come into their territory, and on other occasions they'll shy away from even creatures half their size. There are some ancient Egyptian texts referring to a creature similar to this one, describing it as a god of vengeance. Some referring to it as Khonshu, though it's hard to verify that the creatures described are these very creatures, as there are other wyverns that reside in this area with somewhat similar appearances. Now, while this creature doesn't exactly fit into the same theme as the other, more definitively human-friendly dragons I discussed today, I bring it up because I recently slayed one in protecting a group of travelers I happened upon. As is now my ritual to do when I acquire a creature's hide, I brought it to my crafting friend Vasilia, and the being I witnessed leaving her shop on my way in was, well, a discussion for a later date, but it was quite exciting for me. As for the Egyptian moon dragons, as said prior, avoid them at all costs. They aren't guaranteed to attack you, and may even protect you if you're threatened by another creature, but their actions are so unpredictable that staying in one's presence for too long is certainly not worth the risk. Okay, now Moon Knight isn't exactly definitively an Avenger, I don't think. He has been a secret Avenger before in the comics, so, that kinda justifies having him in this episode, but mostly I added him in because, a few people had suggested that I use him for this episode. The show's coming out soon, I'm excited for the show. Figured he could make a pretty cool, nocturnal kind of dragon, so I thought, alright, why not? Though, admittedly, as soon as I finished this drawing, I saw that Marvel had released a trailer for the Ms. Marvel show. She's more definitively a member of the Avengers, so I probably would have gone with her as a dragon if that trailer had come out sooner, but whatever, I was very happy to do a Moon Knight dragon, and I can't picture many people being too upset about the fact that I'm using him for this episode. I also thought it would be really fun to incorporate the moon into this drawing. I looked at a bunch of different comic book images of Moon Knight where artists had worked in the moon in different ways, and the idea I liked best was having the wings sort of surrounding the moon, and then using that as the rim lighting on the back of the character, and then kind of underlighting him to make him look a little bit creepier. I've been doing that more often in my horror-focused episodes, and I really like the result. I don't think it's as great here as in some of my other stuff, like my Hell of a Boss horror story episode or something like that, but I still think it's pretty cool and changes up the lighting from the other drawings in this episode. The main inspiration I was taking, besides from the Moon Knight costume, was from depictions of Khonshu, the god that gives Moon Knight his powers, who's usually drawn as having a really long, skeletal, bird-like beak head. By the way, the thing Tayron mentioned about an interesting person leaving Vasilia's shop as he was going in is a little teaser for the next episode on Monday. That'll be narrated by Tayron and Vasilia. Hope you all like the result. Here's the final dragon of the episode.
It's been really fun for me going back to the first couple Avengers as Dragons episodes and comparing them to this one, both in terms of the art and the writing. It's really interesting to see how this has all evolved. I'll link the first episode in the cards if anyone wants to go back to it, or if you've never seen it before. But of course, if you're new to the channel and you want something a little bit more up to the quality of the art in this episode, maybe check out the Spider-Man No Way Home Dragons episode. Or maybe you want to check out a Vasilia Kuznet episode, one of my fantasy armor episodes, because a lot of the dragons from this series become armors in those episodes. But of course, besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or uplifting note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is that the recent memories that may make you sad or angry or even furious right now can end up becoming memories that make you smile and make you happy. Things that feel really terrible now can end up being for your ultimate good. You just have to give it enough time. I hope that's helpful to someone out there. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday, which will be a Vasilia Kuznet Fantasy Armor episode, or Fantasy Night episode. You'll see soon enough. See you all there. Goodbye.